What if you woke up one morning, reached for your phone or laptop to check your messages, and realized the internet was gone? Not just for a little while, but vanished forever. The entire global web of websites, social media, streaming platforms, and instant messaging has vanished without a trace. No Google to answer your questions, no emails to check, no online news updates, no video calls to see your friends or colleagues. It's a scenario that sounds like science fiction, but makes you wonder, how would society survive if the internet suddenly disappeared? Would everything stop? Or could humans, clever as ever, find ways to adapt and keep communication alive? Today, on Mega Fact Attack, we'll explore this gripping what-if scenario and take a quick look at how people communicated before the internet changed everything. To understand how life might go on without the internet, we first need to travel back into time to an era when communication relied on slower, more traditional methods. Before the rise of the internet in the late 20th century, people connected through letters, telephones, newspapers, and broadcast media like radio or television. While these methods might seem primitive compared to today's lightning-fast digital world, they kept society functioning for centuries. Letters and postal mail were once the backbone of long-distance communication. Imagine sending a letter overseas that took weeks to arrive, with people eagerly awaiting replies in the meantime. The postal system created a rhythm of patience and anticipation, with handwritten messages carrying not just news, but emotions and stories. Telegrams, short, urgent messages sent via telegraph, were a faster alternative for important announcements, like emergencies or business deals. This slower pace of communication shaped how people organized their lives, valued personal connections, and shared information. Telephones, introduced in the late 1800s, revolutionized communication by allowing real-time voice conversations over long distances. Yet, before cell phones and the internet, landlines dominated, meaning calls were tied to physical locations and often scheduled ahead of time. Businesses, families, and governments relied heavily on phone calls for urgent communication, but the absence of instant text messages or video calls meant conversations were usually more deliberate and focused. Broadcast media also played a crucial role. Radio was the first mass communication tool, broadcasting news, music, and entertainment to large audiences simultaneously. People would gather around their radios at specific times to hear the latest updates or enjoy their favorite shows, creating shared cultural moments that united communities without the need for any internet connection. Television later took this role further by adding visuals and live coverage, but both radio and TV operated on fixed schedules rather than on-demand streaming. Without the internet, many of these older methods would come back to life, but not without challenges. The Global Postal Service, which handles billions of packages and letters yearly, would suddenly become essential again as the main way to send messages, documents, and goods. However, with the massive increase in demand, postal workers and delivery systems would face overwhelming pressure. Delays and backlogs would be inevitable, pushing innovation in logistics and local courier networks. Telephones would regain their former prominence, but modern mobile networks depend heavily on the internet infrastructure. Voice calls and SMS might still work, but many of the apps we use for communication today would disappear. Scheduled phone calls would replace instant chats, and people would likely lean on voice more than text. Businesses and individuals would have to adapt to slower communication, which could initially hinder productivity, but might also reduce distractions from constant notifications. Broadcast media like radio and television would experience a resurgence as primary sources of news and entertainment. Without online platforms, people would return to scheduled programming and shared viewing experiences. Local radio stations might grow in importance, providing community-focused news and emergency information. Workplaces would need to revert to offline methods, such as printed documents, face-to-face meetings, and phone calls. Remote work, which depends heavily on internet connectivity, would face major setbacks, pushing companies to rethink how they organize labor. This could slow down certain industries, but might also foster more personal interaction and clearer communication in others. Economically, the disappearance of the internet would cause huge disruptions. Entire sectors like e-commerce, online banking, digital marketing, and cloud computing would vanish overnight. Many companies would face bankruptcy or massive restructuring. However, history shows humans are remarkably resilient. Before the internet, economies thrived through physical stores, paper ledgers, and in-person networking. While slower and less convenient, these systems could provide a foundation for recovery. Socially, people might rediscover the joy of face-to-face interaction, handwritten letters, and community gatherings. Without the constant pull of social media and online distractions, there could be a renewed focus on personal relationships and local connections. On the flip side, losing the internet would make it harder for people to keep in touch over long distances, which might lead to feelings of isolation for some. So, could society survive without the internet? Absolutely, but it would require a major shift back to older, slower communication methods, combined with innovative adaptations. The internet has undeniably transformed how we live, work, and communicate, but it's important to remember that it's a relatively recent invention in human history. For thousands of years, civilizations thrived and grew without it. If the internet disappeared tomorrow, society would not collapse. It would slow down, adapt, and evolve once again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this exploration, be sure to like and subscribe for more mind-blowing facts and what-if scenarios. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring with Mega Fact Attack.